Hey folks, MasakoX here. So for those of you a bit confused as to what the story is all about here, I am going to be putting part 1 into this video, immediately followed by part 2. So if you have already seen part 1 and you just want to get straight to the next part, I'll leave the timestamp right here for you. Fate is such a fickle thing. Sometimes a simple change of direction could change the fate of an individual. King Vegeta knew this very well. While his first son, whom he had given his own name to, and the name of his father, had been showing rather impressive power level potential whilst in the actual capsule, the other one, well, let's just say he had higher hopes for them. It must have been, without a doubt, coming from the side of the boy's mother. Yes, that's right, it was her fault. How else could he explain such a dramatic difference in power levels? On one hand, he already had an heir, so he shouldn't be that bothered about this situation, not all that much. But deep inside, the king knew that his subjects would be whispering behind his back, that his position as king would have been endangered. He couldn't simply remove the problem. This way of dealing with that would have been good for the lower castes, but this, if he were to do that, it would make him look weak. But what could you do? This disappointing runt would be far too weak to even conquer a planet of his own, let alone grow up to become a respectable Saiyan general. But then again, the enemies of the king could use this boy as leverage against him. Even worse, some of their allies could do that as well. If this runt were in the field and performed poorly, how would that reflect on Vegeta III? He shuddered at the very thought of Cold holding his son hostage. It wouldn't touch him on an emotional level, no, that wouldn't be the issue. It would just render him a weak leader. Instead, he wished to radiate confidence. He was looking through the map of the northern area of the galaxy. It would have been remote enough to keep him away from all of the threats that could endanger his very own integrity. Indeed, there existed a planet that was habitable and would be suitable. Planet 4032-877 to be exact. And according to the data the Saiyans took from the Tuffles, it was inhabited. But the locals hadn't invented spaceflight just yet. They were also a bit, superstitious, but his son could use that to his advantage. Hopefully, if he's not strong, he'd at least be smart. Not something highly regarded within Saiyan society, but once he grew up, he could at least become an advisor for his brother should he return, and dominate the planet with the strength of his mind. That would sound acceptable, but he would certainly need some muscle to back it up. It wasn't a very Saiyan thing to do, thought King Vegeta, but if he could spin this idea well enough, his people would accept this decision. So yes, that would be his final decision. Send that disappointment there, to that planet. Maybe if he is allowed to thrive, he could be at least a little bit useful. If he died, well, that was a risk the king was willing to take. And nobody would have told the king that they were unwilling to participate in the ways of the people that he had dictated. Yes, sending his own progeny like the common folk to show how connected he was to the warriors. Yes, indeed. That would give him even more popularity, relatability. King Vegeta knew that he was a little bit vain, but he was also aware that, from time to time, a dissident could easily stir the pot and stir his people away from his rule, cause trouble. It was never a major concern, mind you, but with the likes of the Cold Force controlling them more and more by the day, he could not risk having his people united against him. After all, he didn't want to look like the Saiyan who kept selling his people to the devil. This was just a means to get stronger and to make his people indispensable. One day, they would understand, and he would be the king of the most influential vassal states of the Cold Force there ever was. Soon, one day, maybe, some of those descendants of his might seize the opportunity and gain the imperial throne for themselves in the name of King Vegeta III. Yes, that sounded nice for the future. But for now, there was this little helpless creature that sadly was his youngest son. He looked to his capsule at the small, weak-looking thing down there. He shook his head. "Send him away to 4032-877, he ordered his scientists. "If he cannot survive there, he is not worth our time." The babysitty nervously stirred in its sleep, and the king gave it one final look. "Do not fail me, Tarble." That was the last time the two would see each other, as King Vegeta's kingdom fell apart, like the house of cards it always was. There is an old legend here on planet Earth, the legend about the turtle and the crane. It was once said that the turtle and the crane were as close to one another as brothers. Both of them were apparently students of the sky itself, which taught them its wisdom. It is said that once dark clouds came and covered the sky, the crane would lose faith in it. The turtle, however, stood within the storm, seeing all of its terrifying might close hand. He saw the morning come, the new hope. The crane, however, became the creature of the night, always looking into the stars seeking bad omens. And one of those omens had just fallen next to his house. Master Shen was irritated. Not only did his last two students prove to be a complete waste of time, he also needed to listen to his brother Tao, bragging about his recent successes. Apparently, there was a new big player in the market that was giving him a lot of money for his services. To make matters worse, it seemed that the sky had started to fall. "What on earth was that?" Shen jumped on his chair, and Tao was barely grimacing. "Probably a meteor. It is summer, and those things sometimes fall from the sky." "It could have hit my house. I need to assess the damage. Maybe it hit my property, so maybe, yes, I can get some money out of my insurance policy." Fragments of space rock can be worth a fortune in of itself. We should sell it. "I might sell it, because it is next to my house, and since it's next to my house, I get all the money." The crane master scoffed. "You wouldn't even know where to start seeking a potential investor or buyer. We are splitting it, if you would wish to have my help." "No, we are not." Shen was already out of time. It seemed that this space phenomena had damaged some nearby trees. Oh no, he enjoyed his night walks over there. His brother followed in his footsteps like a shadow. He hated it when he did that. Even though they were of the same flesh and blood, he never wanted to have Tao behind his back. In fact, he barely wanted to have anything to do with him. He was a professional assassin, and who knows when he would go after his dear old brother, especially when money was involved. And to be fair, given the opportunity, Shen would have probably done the same. "That wasn't a particularly large one," Tao smirked. "We were lucky. Otherwise, it might have hurt us. I would have probably survived, of course, but you, brother, you are always the more delicate of the two." "Shut up and listen. Do you hear that?" Shen's ears moved a little bit. "This sound. It's the sound of a crying infant." When they moved closer to the impact zone, their expressions changed. It wasn't a falling star. It looked like a vessel. "Maybe it's a satellite," Tao suggested curiously. "Do you know any satellites that can cry?" Shen scoffed, his steps more careful. He slowly approached the object, and his skin paled. "Tao? What is it, Shen?" Even Tao was getting a little bit apprehensive here. I think that's an alien." Tarble of the Saiyans. That's what his master called him. According to what he had been told, his alien parents had left him under the tutelage and care of the great crane hermit Master Shen, the most powerful martial arts teacher in the universe. Apparently, a message had been left with him, containing these facts and instructions to follow to the letter, with of course some basic information about his race and whatnot. The moon thing, as the master liked to call it. Tarble always dreamt of seeing this recording one day, to hear the voice of his father, but sadly, to keep his cover, the brother of his mentor had to take his pod to people which he called the army. Well, the young Saiyan wasn't surprised. In all those old movies that he was rarely allowed to watch in uncommon moments of respite, the military was always wary of otherworlders, so it would be understandable for them to be a little bit careful. Also, he had a feeling that Mr. Tao didn't really like him. He once overheard a part of a conversation between the mercenary and the master, in which the younger of the brothers suggested that maybe they should just give this little freak to the science division of the army to see what they will find in there. The master thankfully refused, as he was more interested in training him, which was a great relief. Initially, he was being told that he was a bit of a disappointment, but ever since the moon incident number 1, his mentor changed the tactics regarding his training, and the progress that he was showing after that was at an acceptable pace. But Shen wanted more students. Tarble took up a lot of his time, but having him in better control allowed him to have space for a couple of more pupils. Well, that and the school's finances were starting to look a little bit on the anemic side. Apparently, the money that his parents paid was starting to wear thin, so to speak, and the poor boy had no way of suspecting that the original source of this wealth could have been somewhere else in terms of its sourcing. But even a harsh mentor like Shen saw a little bit of pride in his student when he first was able to use the infamous Dodon Ray. That was a bit of a breakthrough for Tarble, and he was even allowed 15 minutes of movie time that night. Tarble was very happy about that. Maybe one day he could become a true master of the Crane School and return to his parents as a fully fledged warrior. His mentor told him that they wouldn't be back for him unless he became the mightiest in the galaxy. So he understood that Shen had to be harsh. He was doing all of this out of goodness of his heart and in order to help his student fulfill his destiny. One day, he would make both him and his parents proud. The Crane Hermit had mixed feelings about the boy's behavior. On one hand, he was extremely loyal and obedient, but on the other, he was rather soft and far too kind towards strangers. This wasn't too bad for Shen himself, as he enjoyed having someone who, no matter how hard he pushed him, remained nice, amiable, and didn't have a lot of will to fight back. If he had become angry, it could have resulted in significant harm. Also, he could thank Tarble for all of the expansions that he had made in his dojo. After all, the money that the brothers got from selling his vessel to the Red Ribbon Army was quite substantial. Tao said something about them perhaps starting their own space program with the proceeds, but Shen didn't really care for that sort of thing. But it was true that he was quite lavish with his money. It would have been nice to train Tarble to win the tournament, but he couldn't rely just on him. The boy was a hidden powerhouse, obviously, but he also needed someone with the right mindset to back him up. And since he finally started to make some basic progress on that front, he could allow himself to expand his horizons and not have the alien boy take up all of his training time. Particularly, he needed to impart more fundamental knowledge about the world. Of course, naturally tailored to his personal objectives. But still, homeschooling a child was no easy task. Yet those Saiyans were unusually mature, and thankfully, Tarble wasn't much of a crier when he was little especially. He was quite curious when Tao announced though that he might have found some new recruits for his school. He appeared early. Following him were two figures, one rather small and the other slightly taller. What Tarble could see from afar looked rather interesting. The smaller of the boys was rather pale. His comrade, however, had another striking feature. A third eye. Boy, I thought I told you to clean the training room. You'll be training together with these two starting today. Shen then coughed to get his attention, as if he hadn't had it already. Oh, I'm sorry, Master, but I've already done that. I've never met someone my age before. Is this what regular Earthling children look like? The Crane Hermit looked through the window and grimaced. The small one's particularly creepy if you ask me, but as I said, do not judge the coin for its head, but for what you can buy with it. Soon there was a characteristic knock on the door. Mercenary Tao only knocked once. Like an obedient servant, Tarble rushed toward the door to open it for their guests. Tarble, is my brother home? Yes, he is. He's awaiting our news. Tao stepped inside, just ignoring the rest of that sentence. The other two boys followed instead, with only the smaller of the two paying any curious attention to them. The three-eyed one seemed to try and mimic the movement of the mercenary, trying to watch his every single flicker and reflex. He tried to radiate the same aura of confidence too, but it looked rather comical when a preteen boy was trying to do that. Shen made a slow and dramatic entrance. He wanted to look more menacing to his new students. Ah, there you are. Master Shen, it's a great honor to meet the brother of the legend. The three-eyed boy started to talk, but Tao gave them a rather sharp look. Tenshinhan, you will not speak when not allowed. Yes, Master. So, these are the two orphans that I told you about. I do think they have potential, though the smaller one, Chiaotsu, seems to be better in regards to his mental capacity. Mental, you say? Shen raised an eyebrow. Show him. The small pale child raised his hand and closed his eyes. Suddenly, one of the chairs in the dojo started to float. Shen nodded, smiling to himself. A telepath. Nice, nice. And what made you two agree to my brother's proposal? It looked like Tenshinhan wanted to say something, but Tao spoke for him. They witnessed one of my assassinations, you see. Leaving witnesses? Are you growing soft in your old age, brother? The crane hermit chuckled. Tao's face was serious as ever. I do not. He walked straight to his brother and gave him a cold glare. I assure you, they are surprisingly competent. So I propose a little test. How about we check them against this little freak of yours that you so cling to? Shen looked at Tarble, who hadn't noticed the insult. I would be glad to. It's an honor to meet you both. I am Tarble. Welcome to the dojo. He offered Tenshinhan a hand, but the Triclops initially didn't accept it. You can say hello. After all, you will be colleagues. Shen nodded at Tenshinhan. He shook his hand and said nothing. After that, everyone moved toward the training room. Tao signaled the start of the first sparring session between the two of them and Tarble. There was a lot of chaotic tenacity, with Tarble trying to dodge to the best of his abilities. They were rather unrefined, but they were working well together. Chiaotsu was clouding his mind, whilst Tenshinhan, well, he was just beating him mercilessly. I am not very impressed, brother. You've lost your teaching edge. Oh, have I? Tarble, I may allow you now to defend yourself. It was like a switch had gone on in Tarble's mind. Momentarily, Tenshinhan's elbow landed in his hand, and the Saiyan boy gave him a stern look. Then, the Triclops was flying toward his friends, who tried to ease his crash with telepathy, but the opponent was already there, as quick as a shadow, and kicked him from behind. When they tried to make a single attack, he dodged. Finally, he caught Tenshinhan's leg, and in the most polite way possible, asked his master, "Shall I break his leg?" There was a terrified look on the young Triclops' face, and silence fell across the room. That is enough, Tarble! The corners of the crane hermit's lips went up as he triumphantly watched what he had just witnessed. His brother's grimace. Still, I think we are going to be putting the skills of you two to good use. This training session became forever ingrained in Tenshinhan's mind. Although his new master spared him the painful fate of having his leg broken, he also understood that Tarble would have carried out his deed without hesitation, if given the order. Despite maintaining a friendly facade, Tarble was as cold as Mercenary Tao himself. Or at least, that's what the young Triclops was led to believe. This implied that the young Triclops needed to exercise caution and not place their trust in this individual. They were competitors, after all, for Master Shen's attention, and Tenshinhan did not plan on losing. Mercenary Tao left soon after the show, and hadn't spoken a word to either Chiaotsu or his three-eyed friend, making them feel like they had failed slightly in their approach. This, in turn, motivated them to work even harder. Initially, they avoided interacting with Tarble. They viewed him as a messenger from the Crane Hermit, believing that he might take advantage of their supposed weaknesses, and his purpose was to reveal their vulnerabilities. As a result, they either ignored him completely or responded in a very cryptic and bizarre manner. Tenshinhan had to acknowledge his talent as an actor, that's for sure, as he occasionally appeared dejected due to the unwelcoming reaction and reception that he was receiving. However, the young Triclops remained steadfast in his determination to follow his own path. That was the price of trying to impress his hero, Mercenary Tao. As the only survivors of his latest assignment, he and Chiaotsu stood in awe of the man. And since Master Shen and his brother had a lot in common training with him, maybe that could lead to possible victory in whatever he was hoping to do. Especially since their new mentor was pretty demanding. They were prepared for someone as powerful as Tarble. They knew this was not going to be easy. Years passed, and the gap between them and the other pupil of the Crane Hermit seemed to slowly close up. It was Tenshinhan's dedication that caused him to bridge the gap, progress beyond reason of any other humanoid. Once again, Tarble was up to his old tricks, and he seemed happy for his fellow student. Yeah, right, that was a cover. This, of course, had to be a trial. thought Tenshinhan. If they became friendly, and Tenshinhan began to trust him, he was sure that Tarble would have then gone on to betray him, only for Master Shen to inform him how badly he had failed due to his gullibilities and naivete. And whilst the three of them were still training, terrifying news arrived at the dojo. Mercenary Tao had had an accident. Apparently, there had been a young warrior who had inflicted nearly fatal injuries on the brother of Master Shen. Their relationship, it was complicated at best, but Shen was furious that someone other than him dared to give his sibling a good drubbing. Apparently, the mercenary had to return all his funds to a Red Ribbon Army scientist for reactivation and cybernetic enhancements. Disgusting. Artificial enhancements. It was beneath a martial artist like he, but still, brothers. They saw him with his new appendages when he visited the Crane Hermit to showcase these upgrades. Am I supposed to be impressed? Shen hissed. You look ridiculous. Tao's cold eyes gave way to even scarier cylindrical red lenses. The damage was pretty severe, he said dryly. Tao appeared to have suppressed any remaining humanity to an even greater extent. Yes, some kid beat you. I feel so sorry for you. This child, this Goku, he knew the Kamehameha, said Mercenary slowly. He knew what? Shen became even more pale for a second. That's right, I did some digging, and he got to the semi-finals in the last World Martial Arts Tournament. You know what that means. Shen angrily crushed the cup that was in his grasp. His three students had never seen him that angry, ever. He had had outbursts of anger, sure, but this one? This seemed personal. Don't worry about me, brother. I will find a way to get my revenge. These tools do need calibration after all, but you had better be careful. I can imagine that the problem that brought me here could very well turn into your problem very soon. Tao gave Shen an unpleasant smirk. Get out, the Crane Hermit mouthed. What is that, brother? Are you scared? The mercenary tilted his head. Get out! Shen hit the tea table hard, breaking it in half. His brother then laughed quietly and exited the dojo, not even acknowledging the existence of Tarble, Tenshinhan, or Chiaotsu. Once again, silence befell the dojo as the three students looked at each other. What are you waiting for? Clean up this mess! The Crane Hermit yelled at his pupils, who then started to frantically clear up said mess, the damage that their mentor had caused to his own household. After he calmed down, Tarble was the first to speak up. I'm sorry, Master, but you seem distraught. What happened? What does it mean for us? For a moment, Tenshinhan thought that his rival for Shen's attention wasn't some kind of mastermind at all, but rather just a gullible idiot who would soon feel the rage of the hermit himself for asking such a churlish and obvious question. When the old man looked at him from under his glasses, he was expecting the worst, but weirdly enough, Shen only took a deep breath and returned to his composure. No outburst. All three of you will have to exert even more effort than before. There may be an even more formidable opponent coming your way in the next tournament. But don't worry, you are superior. You'll beat him because I told you to do it. I want you to humiliate and destroy this opponent, should he appear. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Master, they all said, as the Crane Hermit then left the room for them to clean up the remains. So that was his purpose. If Tarble simply wanted the Master to make his point clear, maybe to try and intimidate them because he was ballsy enough to try it. Yeah, that had to be it. Why else would he risk receiving Shen's wrath other than to make a point to them? While they were removing the table pieces, Tarble unexpectedly asked Tenshinhan a question. Hey, why do you believe the Master was so angered by the mention of Kame something? His voice appeared to be innocent, genuinely asking a question. Tenshinhan and Chiaotsu looked at each other, and finally the Triclops decided to speak. Why are you asking us? Because I have no idea. Maybe Mr. Tao mentioned something before, but I can't remember. I've never seen him this worked up before. No, we don't know. You would be wise not to question it further. Maybe you're right. If he decides that the time is right for us to know, he would tell us. All right, we're almost done here. I'll transport the table to the town for repair. As he took both halves of the table, he started to walk away from the dojo. Master Shen trusted him with such tasks because he had sufficiently rewarded the townspeople, and therefore they respected Tarble and saw no anger or fear in him. People decided to give odd jobs to them either out of gratitude or just because, well, he was there. Through the window, Chiaotsu was watching Tarble leave.
You know, maybe he really doesn't know Tenshinhan.
Don't fall for his tricks, Chiaotsu. He's up to something. I know it. He knows what's going on and wants to appease the master. Whatever infuriated him is clearly an important matter. If Tarble's able to sedate him, then we'll forever be the second fiddle. Chiaotsu scratched his head.
I don't know, Tian. I'm not sensing any weird stuff from him, you know? Maybe he is just like us.
There was another awkward silence. He wants you to believe that, Chiaotsu. Don't let your guard down, or he'll get you. Tenshinhan pointed at his friend's forehead. Here's our ultimate test. Meanwhile, I can think of an idea to help the master be less angry with us. One that doesn't involve Tarble. Tarble had noticed that Tien and Chiaotsu had started to sneak out of the dojo more often outside of training. Whilst it wasn't a cause for concern yet, Master Shen was greatly pleased when Tien and Chiaotsu began to bring back money. Ooh. One day this stopped, and the two of them looked rather grim. Tarble felt bad for them, he really did. He really wanted to befriend the two, but he didn't want to impose himself on the duo. If they wanted to be friends with him, it was up to them to make the first move. After all, these many years had passed since they first appeared on their doorstep, and if they didn't want to allow him to get closer, that was their own right to do so. The bombshell then came when Master Shen asked them about their little side business, which was bringing them all that cash. We were doing really well, but someone named Goku came along and messed everything up, the Triclops admitted. I think we've heard that name before, right? Tarble tilted his head. The crane hermit sighed. This time, it wasn't an explosion of anger, but rather determination. All right. I will tell you the truth. You probably noticed that lately I've been a little bit harder on all three of you. This is due to the fact that that newcomer, Son Goku, whom the two of you have encountered, was a finalist in the previous World Martial Arts Tournament. And what about it? We're determined to defeat him thoroughly, Master. Tien looked very proud. He wasn't so tough. I like what you're saying, Tenshinhan, but you see, he is a student of my fiercest rival, the Turtle Hermit. Tarble's eyes widened. He had never heard about someone as powerful as his master, even having a rival. This would mean that it could be someone nearly as mighty as Shen himself, but obviously, he couldn't have been stronger. His parents wouldn't send him over after all to this planet if that were the case. But obviously, the Turtle Hermit's not as great as you, Master, the Saiyan boy said to the old crane. The hermit smirked. He liked the sound of these words. No, of course not. But all three of you must be extra careful. If you are indeed careless, his students can defeat you with their cunning and disgusting tactics, and that would be a disgrace to me and my school. And we do not want that now, do we? That would just give the wrong impression about who we are as an organization. Of course, they all said as one unit. Good, because it implies that you'll be exerting even more effort by agreeing to this. The next World Martial Arts Tournament starts in 3 years. This time, I want you to surpass that Goku fellow, and frankly, anyone this old fool would toss at us. Do we understand one another? Shen addressed them, appearing to regain control of his faculties. He received enthusiastic salutes in response. Good. Let's begin. Starting now. Their declaration gave them 3 exhausting years of training that pushed them to their extremes. While they hadn't been friendly with each other, Shen forced them to work together. All of this Tenshinhan reluctantly accepted. After all, they were playing against the enemy, the same enemy. Maybe they would have to work together to defeat him. But Tenshinhan knew that he had to be the one to defeat Goku ahead of Tarble to gain special favor with the master. During this time, they also learned something more about Mercenary Tao. The army had failed, but he had managed to hide its assets in different parts of the world and even sent some into space. Tarble was worried that they were under attack, but Shen scolded him for watching too many sci-fi flicks as of late and told him to focus instead on the tournament. Finally, the fateful moment came, as the 4 of them traveled to the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. As they arrived at the grounds, they immediately saw a group of people led by an older man dressed in a black suit and hat. with a great staff. They didn't need to guess all too much to figure out who that was. As they approached, this individual, who was also wearing a pair of spectacles like the head of the Crane School, had a short stare-off session with Master Shen. After a long and awkward pause, which has since become the staple of this timeline, the other man finally spoke.
Crane Hermit, you're still alive. Offensive as always, Turtle. I heard a silly little rumor that your disciples did quite well in the last tournament. Well, only because we didn't take part. I brought my 3 students so they could show the world who the superior fighting master is. And we both know that it is me. Tarble, Chiaotsu, Tenshinhan, say hello. The Triclops and the little floating boy simply gave them mean smiles, whilst the young Saiyan bowed politely. He felt a strange sensation, like the Turtle Hermit's comrades were all looking at his tail.
We'll see what happens during the fights, the other man said. Oh, we shall, but is someone missing? Questioned Shen, his voice as sharp as a dagger.
He'll come. Clearly something important got in the way,
one of the young women said to them. For some reason, Tarble could not stop looking at her. She had teal hair and didn't seem to be particularly intimidated by his master or any of this. We won't be waiting for him. We have better things to do. Boys, let's go. Shen gestured for them to walk away, and as they were leaving, Tarble noticed someone moving toward the Turtle Hermit and his posse. Someone dressed in something resembling the fur of a tiger. To the Saiyan's surprise, he possessed a tail similar to his, just like his. He forgot all of his trained instincts as he walked away from his group, which hadn't initially realized that he was missing, and decided to approach. He could hear all the warm greetings as his friends welcomed this new person. When he approached, they became guarded. "Yeah, what are you looking at, punk?" The other woman, a blonde one, giving him the stink eye, said. I'm terribly sorry. I just wanted to... Suddenly, he was spotted by the newcomer, who spoke out loudly.
Oh, hey! Are you a new friend? Who are you?
He approached him, looking at his tail. Hey, my name is Tarble. It's nice to meet you. So you're a Saiyan too?
Say a what?
The jungle boy tilted his head, utterly confused. Meanwhile, Master Shen and the others saw the meeting from afar. Tien and Chiaotsu didn't need any external help to realize that their master suddenly looked very pale. Did he appear to be scared of something? Saiyans, that's what I am. From space. You remember? Planet Vegeta? Tarble seemed a little bit shocked that this individual had no clue about what a Saiyan was.
Oh, no, I'm not the science type. Paula is. Maybe tell her. Hey, are you participating in the tournament? I think I recognize your key. Anyway, Tarble, it's nice to meet ya. My name's Son Goku.
The boy extended his hand with genuine pleasure, and after hearing these words, it was the young Saiyan who became pale. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over him. Now he understood why this could be very challenging. He quickly turned away and walked toward his master. He could not fail him, and that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.